Okay, so we'll take a look at the code now. At the class level, I have three variables. So remember that if a variable is declared up here at the top of our program, right underneath the line class, the the variable is remembered as long as the form exists, basically. So the class is called form5. As long as form5 is on the screen, the values of these three variables will continue to exist and continue to be remembered by the program. So randnum is just going to be what I use to generate a random number. That random number will determine which of the colors shows up each time through the program. Store order is a string. Now remember, a string is a non-numeric value, and basically it's just going to store the numbers that were chosen, but not as a number, just as a string. So essentially it's going to store the random numbers chosen. Something like 2, 3, 4, 3, 5 would indicate that as I was generating my random numbers, I got the value 2, then the value 3, then the value 4, and so on. And of course we said we're down to 3, so I'll just leave it as 2, 3, 4. And flash count is going to just count how many times a color has been flashed. Once it reaches that 3 in this case, or the 5 that we were talking about initially, the program stops flashing new colors and waits for you to then answer what colors were flashed. So, form load. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, but form load is a sub that runs as the form starts up. So you noticed when we ran it that this message box came up before we even saw the form. So this stuff actually happens kind of in setting up the form, in loading the form, before the form is actually on the screen. So you only put information in here that you want to have happen or generate before the form is actually available, and never again. So in this case, a message that says what you're going to do is memorize the color pattern. Randomize is just a command that we put in anytime we use random numbers to guarantee that each time we run the program we get a different combination of random numbers. Otherwise we would get something like blue, red, green every time we ran the program, every first time we ran the program. And then we'd get yellow, green, red every second time, and so on. Store order, again, is just going to store those random numbers, and so initially it's a blank, and this is just sort of a simple way to make things, to empty a string, make it equal to absolutely nothing. If I wanted it to be equal to my name, I could put Mr. Allen in there. In this case, I want it to be equal to nothing, so I'll put nothing in there. Just sort of for the record, that is not the same as nothing. That is 3 spaces. The computer would recognize it as being different than this, which is actually nothing. This turns on a timer and sets the flash count to be 0. So now into the timer, and you probably could have guessed that the timer was what we were using. Anytime we have that kind of repeat this code over and over but leave a gap of time, 1 second, a half a second, whatever, a timer is the most likely thing for us to use. So in this case it's increasing the flash count, indicating that we're making that first flash on the screen at this point. Dim old rand equals rand num. So I put this in for a specific reason. You can sort of see that this section of code is kind of blocked off as if it's separate from the rest. And all this does is it makes sure we get a new color. So I found that if I got red followed by red, it was kind of hard to tell because of course you didn't see the change. And so this was just sort of guaranteeing that old rand remembers what the last random number chosen was. And then this do loop until says continue to loop around and around, picking a new random number until the old rand, the one from the previous round, does not equal the new rand, or the random number that I'm choosing, the one that I'm about to use. And so in case you can't tell, that is the less than symbol followed by the greater than symbol. If something is either less than or greater than, it is not equal to, so that's what we use in Visual Basic. Most languages use this symbol and the equal sign is not equal. Visual Basic is just less than or greater than. Store number now. So this is, store order. This is again just taking that random number and sticking it onto my string. If the string is empty, then the first value that goes on is whatever random number we just had. Otherwise, it just kind of adds it to the end. This little note says add rand num to the end of store num. Append is the word we use for that. And then based on that random number, we choose to either display a background that is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or violet. So if the random number is 1, make me, again remember me is this current form, dot back color equal to the color red. If random number is 2, make me dot back color, so my back color equal to the color orange, and so on. And then the last thing here, if the flash count reaches 3, turn the timer off, so timer enabled equals false. Change the flash count back to 0 to indicate that we're done flashing new colors this turn. And then based on whether we either get or don't get the answer right, the timer can be turned back on and started anew. And so the last thing, of course, is what happens with the button submit. And this is going to be a little long. It's not quite as elegant as it could be, but based on what we know so far, this is kind of our best way to go about things. So inside the submit button, what you'll notice, and I didn't think of this till right now, none of my radio buttons have any code in them. Okay, so the way radio buttons tend to work is I'm allowed to kind of play with them all I want, change them back and forth as many times as I choose to, and then kind of once I'm happy with my decision, I click submit. That doesn't mean you can't use them another way, but that is the way that typically they are used. So I have no code at all in my radio buttons. What I do is when I click the submit button, now this is sort of my attempt at building another string, in this case called winning order, and this string will be the player's guess of the order for the colors. And so basically I'm going to use the same numbering system as we did with the random number generator. Red is 1, orange is 2, and so on. And so if the person has selected radio button 1, so if this has been selected, if radio button 1 dot checked, then put the 1 in as my first choice. Otherwise, if radio button 2 is checked, then put winning order in as 2 as my first choice, and so on and so forth. Now, when we look at the second panel, remember that violet is actually where radio button 7 is. This is radio button 8, and so on. So they're kind of in the reverse order because, as I said, they flip when I copy them. So if radio button 7 is checked, then winning order equals winning order and a 6. So take whatever value was already in winning order from the previous panel and add the 6 to the end of it. Append a 6 on my existing number. Otherwise, the 5, the 4, and so on. And then the last set, exactly the same thing. When I get to that third set, violet is down here at 13. This is 14. And so again, if I get the, if I've chosen the 13, add the 6 onto the end, add the 5, and so on as we go.